Hear me?
Yeah, we're here. We're live. Sorry, that was my bad. We started late. I was late. Zach was on time.
All
Hi,
good.
everybody. Welcome to Always Bookin Comedy. I'm Mark Masters. I'm your host, and we got Zach Peterson. I'm going to fix your name real quick. So we get it's O-N, right?
Correct.
Peterson from Omaha, Nebraska. Great
That's
comic,
right.
super funny. Let's get into it. How long have you been doing comedy? It's been a long time.
Yeah, about 13 years.
Oof, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Where did you start in Omaha?
I did. Yeah. And then I
You
moved to
must
Chicago, then LA.
Okay. Are you the longest running like I feel like Omaha is a market that a lot of people with your success might leave. Are you the longest tenured comic in Omaha?
I'm not. I could be missing some people, but the only person that I can think of that has been here longer than me is Nick Allen.
Okay.
And Nick has been on Last Comic Standing and is
Wow.
he has a morning radio show that he's a
Okay.
part of.
Nice.
Mhm.
Cool. So you went to Chicago and LA during that time? How long were you in those places?
I was in Chicago for about 8 years and Los Angeles for 10 whole months.
Good. Chewed you up and spit you out.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that the work's so hard to survive. And then it's like, well, I'm not doing comedy. So why the hell am I here?
Right. Meaning you were like working like to earn money to pay rent. And
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
I mean, you can't make inroads when you aren't trying.
Right. Yeah, that's tough. So which came first, Chicago or LA?
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what prompted that? Do you feel like
Uh,
you grew out of Omaha or was it random?
it was random because at the time, uh, Omaha being so secluded almost, uh, there wasn't any like roadmap of someone who succeeds in comedy, what they do. So there wasn't like there was people that moved away from Omaha, like Ryan County and people that moved to Austin, but I never they were gone before I started, and so I didn't know I was supposed to move. I was just like, well, hell, I'm going to do comedy. I have no idea what to do with it. And then my ex-wife started grad school in Chicago, and that's why I moved. And then like sort of the whole universe of comedy opened up to me at that point.
Huh. How many years in were you then?
3.
3. Okay, so pretty new. And then you go to
Mhm.
Chicago. How is Chicago different than Omaha back
Uh,
then?
oh, I mean, it was a culture shock because Omaha was very much about creating your own, your own shows. Like there was the Funny Bone, but that was it, and there was I think 2 open mics in the whole state at that point. So it was essentially like do whatever you can because nothing's happening. And then I go to Chicago and, it's Chicago. There's like 4 or 5 clubs. There's like 5 open mics a night. Professionals are in and out. At that time, JFL was still in Chicago.
Huh.
Uh, and like I went and saw Ben Roy because I knew Ben Roy from Omaha, and he did a show on stage 773 on Belmont in Chicago, and then Maria Bamford dropped in and did like a 15-minute set, and I was like, this is insane. Like it's a whole different world. Like it's literally like, one of those things where like the whole world like unveils itself to you and it's completely different than you ever would have thought.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild. Ben Roy, for anybody who doesn't know, he lives in Denver, grew up in Maine, incredible comedian, so funny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's the best. And Maria Bamford, she's famous. If you don't know who she is,
Right.
get a Netflix account, I guess. Watch.
I mean, if
Yeah,
you're a comedy fan, you don't know who Maria Bamford is. I just don't know if you're a comedy fan.
yeah. Okay. Anything surprise you about Chicago? Any like
Uh,
negative? Kind of on the negative. So it sounds like you were awestruck by the quality of the comedy and the quantity.
right.
Any downsides?
Um, not really. I mean, I never knew what I wanted to do with comedy, and I never like thought that there was the outlet for me to work as hard as I wanted to. in comedy. I went to Chicago, and it gave me that opportunity to just go out and do multiple mics in a night and book shows and run around the country. And I mean, there are downsides to comedy, obviously, but at that point, that wasn't it. It was like it was like I met the people I found the place I was supposed to be at that time.
So you mentioned booking shows. Did you start running shows in Omaha in your first 3 years, or did you start in Chicago?
Yeah, me and a handful of friends that started around the same time started booking shows, bringing touring acts in. We had people like Doug Benson, Roy Scovel,
Wow.
I mean Adam and Adam and Ben. We brought in
Holland. Yeah.
back when the Fine Gents were the Fine Gents. They would come and do a show together, all
Wow.
four of them. Yeah, and
So
Rob
why would you
Delaney.
say why did you guys start running shows?
Oh, because at that point, I mean, we were really into stuff like Comedy Bang Bang or Comedy Death Ray at the time. WTF, the alt, quote unquote alt scene, back when there was like sort of a differentiation between the two, where there was clubs and there was alt, and now it's whoever. It doesn't really matter. But we didn't get to see the comics that we wanted to see in Omaha at that time. It's just, I feel like, and maybe this was youth speaking or just not knowledge, but there wasn't those comics that we felt connected to coming to Omaha as much.
Yeah. How did you, those are big names. Like, how did you attract them? And was there an audience for them? Like, were you selling tickets and doing well, or how'd that go?
We were pretty connected to the music scene, the punk scene, from playing in bands in my 20s. And there's like these production companies here in Omaha that now like own like giant venues because of their association with Saddle Creek, like Bright Eyes and Cursive, and the Omaha sound. Early 2000s Omaha sound is, I think a lot of record dorks would say. But we talked to them. They're like, they have a venue. They're willing to do a lot of the promotion and put it out there, and we're willing to do the stage managing and help with promotion, and put our butts on the line for money and make sure that it gets sold. And luckily we were successful. And it was, looking back on it now, it was very risky in terms of what we were doing, and luckily we succeeded.
That's awesome. That's great. Any memorable shows? I mean, those are some big acts. Anything you remember from way back then?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch, because this was before, and there wasn't, I don't know, like, it just seemed like I think it's my own ignorance from being so young and like not like seeing how things are, but we would just have any comics that came through would come by, and we had this little art space off of Dodge, which is the main road in Omaha, and like the basement of an art studio. And it was completely, I don't know how legal it was, because it was BYOB and there was no licenses or anything, and the stairs were treacherous. But we would just have shows there with whoever, like on a Wednesday night. And one night, a couple of comics came through and played for 15 people, and it was Louis Katz and Nate Bargatze. And
whoa, get out of here.
They were moving from New York to Los Angeles, and they just need a show in Omaha. And we're like, I don't know who these people are, but
unbelievable. So how did they find you? Is this like Facebook or through another comic, or?
Yeah, I think it was Facebook or an email where it's like, hey, we're just two New York comics passing through. And I think that was,
in 15 years, I'll be selling out arenas.
Yeah, right. It's
I'll
it's
host
so
Saturday
crazy.
Night Live in about 10 years. Why don't you book me?
Right. And it was just us and a friggin', our studio basement smoking weed, and it's like, this is comedy, this is great. And this was
That's
after like
awesome.
Full-Time Magic, his first record, that is so good. And then that space turned into the Backline Comedy Theater, which is now like
Oh,
a comedy
yeah,
club that's downtown. But
nice.
yeah, I mean, but that was its beginnings, was
That's
just like
where
a
the
bar
basement
studio.
was? Is there a basement beneath that?
Not, I mean, no, it wasn't there. It was like, you've been to my house. You know where that movie
Yeah,
theater is? Like right by my house, it's right
yeah.
across the street from that movie theater.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think it's like a vape store now,
Okay.
but they were like running like an illegal comedy club in the basement for a few years.
That is wild. So then when you moved to Chicago, how does that translate? Like when these big names come to Chicago, they
Mhm.
probably want to do bigger rooms, make more money, et cetera. What was it like
Right.
trying to start running shows in a bigger market?
Well, I mean, to be completely honest, like, I didn't do the same thing. There were a group of folks here in Omaha that sort of stayed back and they did the thing, and they had Cromfest and had all these like big names like Ron Funches and Rory, like all these great festivals. And I went to Chicago, and I ran Arguments and Grievances and an open mic. And Kevin O'Brien ran Arguments and Grievances in Denver for such a long time. And then he was initially from Nebraska, but also lived in St. Louis and started comedy in St. Louis with Kevin White. And Kevin White was in Chicago when we started Arguments and Grievances. So it's like this weird small world of the Denver show going to Chicago by way of St. Louis, and then me meeting up with them, and then we started producing it. Me, Kevin White, Kevin Brody, and Goodrich Gavart, and that really took off at the time because we podcasted it and we recorded the shows live. We toured with it, and it really helped sort of establish myself in Chicago at the time. And we sold out the Nerd Melt in Los Angeles because of it, and that was a really exciting time. Yeah, and I think I kept doing Arguments and Grievances until I moved back to Omaha, and I was still touring with it a little bit. Like, went up to Savage Henry in Northern California. I think that was my last time doing it, but that got us all over the country. I mean, we did it. We even did a episode from Second City in Chicago at their stand-up club called Up, when that was around before it burned down. And at the Laugh Factory, and we did it. We went all the way to New York. We had like episodes like Mike Lawrence, like in New York at Stand Up New York, and just really, like at the time, I was like, this is just what happens in comedy. But now I look back, like, holy crap, I was really doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we all over the country, and yeah. I mean, that was my main focus when I was there, was doing the Arguments and Grievances podcast and the live show. I had
What's
other
for
shows.
people who don't know, give us the elevator pitch on Arguments and Grievances.
Oh, it's essentially comedy debates where it's one person has one subject, pro or against, like cats versus dogs, and then the audience votes on who wins after 2 5-minute rounds.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, I did that in Chicago, and I also did a show called VHS, which is like a Mystery Science Theater 3000, with stand up in the middle of watching old VHSs I found at thrift stores. And then I helped produce the Comedy Exposition, which sort of harkened back to the stuff I did in Omaha, or really helped with Omaha, because it wasn't just a one-man show. But that was a festival when JFL left Chicago. Me and a handful of people decided Chicago needed a festival at the time, and we did it for about 3 years, and it was very successful. And it was a hell of a lot of work, though. Like, we'd start in February. There's like 4 or 5 of us. We start in February and like work like almost every day until June or July to create this 3-day festival. And we had it grew and it just sort of outgrew the labor that we were willing to put in.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I
the
can hear
last
that.
year.
I'm at year 3 in the Vail Comedy Festival, and it's like there was like this year it was successful on the outside, but on the
Mhm.
inside there was a lot of turmoil and some growing pains. And
Right.
some people legitimately asked me, like, are you going to do this again? And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I will. But there was yeah, it's a lot of work. It sure
It
is.
it really is. And anyone who like as soon as I helped run a festival is like I never got angry about anyone at a festival ever again. Like, why did they watch the tapes? Like 600 people asked to
It's
be
just
on the
like
festival.
if you work in restaurants growing up, you have like a
Right.
different attitude when something doesn't go right in an attitude in a
Yeah.
restaurant as an adult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of work, and it just feels like everyone complains about the
Yeah.
festival regardless. But it's it was rewarding, and we did some really cool things.
Yeah.
The last year was just disaster after disaster, but it still came off like as a great show. But it was like we had venues flooding. We had Greg Proops was like our final headliner, and the lights in it was in Lincoln Park, and I think it was the Lincoln Theater or Lincoln, like it was a big like 700-800
Wow.
seat theater, like a big deal. And the lights were out and the place was full. And
Like
they
the
were selling.
electricity was out or
Yeah.
oh, okay.
And the people at the bars like, we don't have any cold beer, everything is down, and we're using print offs, and are we even going to have a show because we can't have a microphone, we don't have lights.
Yeah.
So we walk up
You get a
to
megaphone and a flashlight.
well, we were just willing to call it. We were just like, okay, well, we're going to eat a bunch of money, and we're going to go in debt. And then we went to Greg Proops and was like, hey, we got to cancel the show. And he goes, I understand, not much you can do. And then the lights come on, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're doing the show now.
Nice.
And it turned out fine, but I mean, that's a hell of a headache.
Yeah.
And there were storms all that year. Eddie Pepitone was flown in. I think he was like our Saturday night headliner or one of our headliners. And his flight got diverted to Indianapolis, which is like a 2.5, 3 hour drive from Chicago. And I had to go pick him up while the festival is going on, and get back at 6 a.m. after driving all night, and then wake up at 11 for like late breakfast or something that we're doing.
That's funny because one of the themes of the negative stuff that happened at the festival this year was a flight problem that impacted me. And like, I swear that it was a 5-hour difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear that 5 hours messed up the entire weekend. I was just like, I needed that 5 hours to get stuff done. And it just didn't happen. And I was just like, the whole time I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off because I just wasn't organized.
Yeah, it goes back to like you were saying about working in a kitchen where it's the lunch rush and all you're doing is doing stuff, and you're like, oh shit, that was 4 hours.
Yeah.
But imagine like you need all that time to do all that stuff, and it just disappears.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I have a very hyper specific question for you.
Sure.
So it sounds like a theme of this is you took a lot of big swings. Like, this is pretty exciting. This is a very cool episode of Always Bookin Comedy. What was the most negative financial swing you ever took?
Oof. To be these big swings I took, they were always with a group of people.
Okay.
So that made the financial risk low.
You spread it out
me
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like
for the team, let's say for the team, if that was basically, what was your biggest financial disaster? A flop, if you will.
I mean, we're still, it could have been this week. I have to see if I can get reimbursed for like $600 for a venue. But like the last 2 weeks in promotions, I've had
summer sucks, man. If you're listening to this in the future, it's early July. 4th of July just happened last week.
Yeah. And I 2 weeks in a row, great venues and good people. Great comics and good people that I like, canceled day of.
No, the venue or the headliner?
The headliner. But then 2 weeks ago 2 weeks ago, the venue canceled day of, and the people
Well,
canceled day of. It was just like,
that's almost good. Maybe is that better? Would you rather the venue also cancel? I guess it depends on the order. Or was
right,
it
well,
that the venue canceled and then the headliner? Did they know?
no.
No, it
What
was
happened that in the morning, I wake up and like 10 o'clock in the morning and goes, "Hey, I hate to do this, but the air conditioner is broken, so we can't have a show." And it was like 92 degrees that day.
Did you? And what kind of ticket sales are we looking at?
It was
Positive, or was this like a relief? Because I can imagine
positive,
sometimes it's a relief. It's like, thank goodness.
positive, but it was a don't tell.
Okay.
So the people, the
Oh, they have
people
no
out there,
idea.
they don't
That's
know,
helpful.
but I do, and so I have to rebook the whole thing because the
Yeah.
headliner is gone, and then the air conditioner is gone, and I recently brought on a new producer for Don't Tell, named Megan Malone, who's a great comic here in Omaha, and they have a million connections, and they just reached out, and we got a new venue. But it was like, but instead of BYOB, which most Don't Tells are, at least the ones that I produce, it wasn't. So we had to like email everyone and be like, if you want to cancel, that's fine. And then once that fire was put out, and it's just like the transportation for the headliner fell through, and it was just like, okay, now I got to rebook the whole show. And that wasn't even the one where I lost money. That's one this week where the venue was fine, but people get sick, and yeah, the ticket sales, because it was a holiday weekend, were so bad. Well, I mean, they weren't bad because we still had 70 people, which is like, that's not like a failure, but
It's enough to have fun.
I mean, yeah, but
I mean,
but
maybe
also,
like I actually did a show once with about 70 people in a
Mhm.
700-person theater, and it was pretty sad.
Ooh, yeah,
So if
yeah,
you get like a big enough place,
right,
that could be bad. But even if it's like 200, that's pretty decent if you seat them well.
right. Well, 120 is the capacity of this
Hmm,
place, so it was
that's
fine, and
totally
like,
fine.
yeah, but the thing is that like I needed like like the cutoff for the show, like not being like profitable at all, was like 60 people,
Oh,
and
so you're
so
just
like it was
eking out.
right there, and
Was it
I'm
a
like,
was that one a show where you marketed the headliner by name or no?
no,
Secret
it was a
headliner.
don't.
Okay.
I Yeah, well, I did the credits
Oh,
of the headliner, and if anyone came, it's like, hey, none of these people been on Comedy Central. I'm like, you got me.
yeah.
But what are you going to do? Like I did what I could. And if I canceled it, then I'd be out, almost $1,000. And so I'm not going to cancel it.
Right.
And so I'm still sort of like, I got to do some paperwork, and hopefully it'll be minimal. Um, and I think I'm much more risk averse now, because I
Mm.
don't think I'm trying to prove anything or build, like it's
Yeah.
like,
Well, you also in that scenario, I feel like you have a little less control. Like you're not
right,
really the primary marketer, right?
right.
So that's kind of weird. Yeah.
Right, but I'm also like, I'm pushing the chips in. I'm like, yeah, this will be fine,
Yeah.
and then seeing if it works.
Yeah,
And
summer,
most of the time it
man.
does.
If I've had failures, they've almost always been in the summer. It's so hard to
Right,
get people out.
right.
It's it's difficult. I have some shows later this month that I'm really sweating. Like I have more than one that still have 0 ticket sales.
That's the
And I'm
worst.
like, I mean, that's pretty unusual. Usually there'll be a handful of ticket sales
Hmm.
going. These are established shows that like, last month had 50 people at them and they have
Right,
0 ticket sales. And I'm like,
right.
what is happening? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then like it's always like the day of or 2 days as they start to trickle in, and then even if they go well, it still feels like you just like run over, and you're just like, I've been
Yeah,
stressing about
it's tough.
this for so
I
long.
love I mean, the thing I love the most in booking comedy is a show that sells out like a week in advance. That is like
Yes.
such a sweet thing. Like,
Hmm.
don't have to it saves me so much work because when a show's not selling well, like I'll pay for ads and I gotta make the ad and maybe it's got video and I gotta rip the video and put
Right.
graphics on it. And I hate working with the social media advertising platforms. Every interface it takes way longer than you would expect. And then maybe I'd do an email campaign, and maybe I drive around and hang up posters. And like, if the show's sold out, I don't have to do any of that. It's incredible.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
The only problem I have is people basically throwing money at me. There's people like, oh, I see this sold out, but I'll give you like $100 if you can get me in. Can you get me 3 people in? We'll give you $300. Like, that is like, that's not even a problem. That's like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I'm going to go buy 3 more chairs.
Yeah.
It'll cost me $20. Then I'm going to save them. I'm going to squirrel away that money until next July, because next July and August are going to be a bloodbath.
Right. Right. It sucks, and also you think like, oh, the weather's starting to get too hot and everyone wants to come inside, and that's still not the case. I don't know what people are doing.
Yeah. Do you time shift at all? Do you run your shows later when the sunset is much later?
I don't. Usually it's a 8:00 start.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I'll do places with window coverings or no windows.
Yeah.
Much of the time, but other times it'll just not be as fun.
Yeah, exactly. So to newer showrunners, what are some of your top tips for running a great show?
Figure out how to be okay. I mean, in terms of like, my biggest problem is stress, because even like I have like my monthlies that always go well, but I never believe they will. So it's like I have a show at Tiny House and a show at Backline, and both are relatively smaller rooms, where I think Backline's cap is like 60 or 70, and it's the first Saturday at 8:00. So it's like, it's the sweet spot. I could just not do anything and we'd sell 25, 30 tickets, no problem. And that's a decent show.
Mm-hmm.
But and Tiny House is like 30, 35 is capacity. So like, it's very easy, but I'm still stressed out every single time. So it's a matter of, how do you just be okay with ticket sales and dealing with the stresses of it? Because I'm realizing now that like, no matter how long I do this, I'm always stressed about it. Like, I've literally been booking shows since I was 16 years old, because I started out booking punk rock shows, and like, the anxiety of it never goes away regardless of what I'm doing. So like, if you're going to do this for long term, don't do what I did. Like, feel okay about it.
What would you say your top stress? Like, obviously we talked about ticket sales as a top stress. Would you say like venue and performers showing up, or is there anything else?
It's all about the unknown, where we don't know what's going to happen, but it feels like something always does. People canceling, it's fine, like it always works out. Things are always fine. But like one time we had like one of the Tiny Houses, like a very living room feel. We have like a couch, like a couch broke, so he's like, so instead of one of the legs, we had books on it, and it was just like one of those things. We got to get this done, making sure everyone gets paid enough, because these are smaller rooms, and so the pot's gonna.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that is stressful, and you never want to like. You don't want, like me personally, I worry about my reputation, and you're like hoping that the comic. That's another big stressor for me. Do the comics have fun at the show? And similar thing for the audience, because I want to be a successful business going forward, so I want it to be a good show for lots of reasons. One is so the customers come back, but a big one is so that the comics are happy. It's not a waste of their time.
Right. I never want to say I'm sorry. I always want to say you're welcome.
Yes.
Thanks.
Oh, that's great. I like that. That's a great. Nice.
Like, sometimes when things are looking grim, like, one of the things I'll say is, I'll be like, hey, it's not embarrassing. It's okay. And that's I hate it. And that's like the worst feeling. But luckily with the shows I currently run, it's never been embarrassing, which is
nice.
The best.
Nice. All right. Well, we got to wrap this up. Any other pearls of wisdom? And then, how do people find you, pitch your album? How do people see you live? Because you're also a very funny comedian.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Go to ZachPetersonComedy.com, and everything's on there, right? Like, all my social media stuff is on there. My album And my special, A List of Wet Celebrities, is actually on the front page. Or you can just Google List of Wet Celebrities, or see what happens. Maybe we get something fun. Go to YouTube, put A List of Wet Celebrities in, or just Zach Peterson Comedy. It's the first thing that pops up. Mr. Zach Peterson on Twitter. I don't know why I led with Twitter, but which is like a dying, like the wastelands of social media. King of the River Peterson on TikTok and Instagram, which I suppose are the important ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, man. That was a lot of fun. That was great. Any closing thoughts on this? Is all about booking. Can you top Nate Bargatze as somebody you've booked?
I don't think so. I mean, how do you top someone who sells out arenas?
That's got to be a record for this entire run of this of this series. I don't think anybody's going to top that for a while.
It was so incidental. It was an accident, like it had nothing to do. It was all luck and not skill.
That's great.
But yeah. I mean, just if you want something to happen, make it happen. And that's about it.
Yeah. Do hard work and good things will follow. All right, everybody.
Right.
Have a great week. We'll be back next Monday. Thank you to Zach Peterson. That's Peterson out of Omaha, Nebraska. And you can find him online at zachpetersoncomedy.com. Stick around for a second, Zach. We're going to close this